All right, everyone. We might get started in a couple of minutes. Just give everyone time to take a seat. All right, cool. Well, thank you everyone for coming today to our presentation about getting connected in the cloud. My name's Evan. I'm the infrastructure manager at Schoolbox, and today I'm joined by James, our CPO and CTO, as well as my fabulous infrastructure team who are sitting down on my left and who are going to give you all a wave. All right, that's the wrong way. There we go. All right, so to get started, just a quick agenda for today. We're going to sort of take you through a little bit of our story of where we started with Schoolbox Cloud, what's happening now and what's next, what's happening in the self-hosted Schoolbox space as well, why you might like to move to cloud, how you prepare to migrate, the integrations and data you have access to in the cloud, a little bit on legacy feature retirement as well, and then what the next steps are to book your migration. So for those who joined us for this similar presentation at Meetup in May last year, you'll be pleased to know that we've made quite a bit of progress on our roadmap that we presented. Just a bit over a year later, each component that we presented has either been deployed to our cloud production environment or is under active development. And we've also done a whole lot of extra bits that I'm going to present shortly. So Schoolbox Cloud was launched in 2018 and primarily is a solution for schools that didn't have the self-hosted server infrastructure or the IT resources, whether they be the physical resources or the personnel to run Schoolbox themselves. It was quite complex for us to run Schoolbox in the cloud in 2018. It was a time-consuming process to spin up instances and an even more time-consuming process to shift them from self-hosted to cloud. However, today this has all changed and we can migrate schools with under an hour of downtime, and we can spin up instances in Schoolbox Cloud. So that is your Schoolbox site within our cloud within around 20 minutes of us wanting to do so. And that's just a brief overview of some of the AWS technologies that was in our original Schoolbox Cloud. It was pretty straightforward, as you can see. We had some virtual machines, or in AWS lingo, EC2s, that do the computing. We had a SQL database, which in AWS lingo again is RDS, and then file storage in S3, which is basically just a big folder of files. Today we are now in our third iteration of Schoolbox Cloud, and the refined architecture is a scalable and rapidly deployable solution. We've deployed it across 3 continents now, and the installations now only take, as I said, around 15 or 20 minutes, and migrations an hour of downtime. And we're also able to deploy Schoolbox Cloud to a brand new region, so another country or continent within AWS within a day. So this sort of just outlines our locations we're currently in, being Sydney, Singapore, Bahrain, and now Frankfurt. It does look like we're on a bit of a trajectory towards Greenland, but I don't think we're launching there anytime soon. Yeah, so as you can see, we do have Schoolbox Cloud available in all the regions that we have customers now, which is fantastic. This is our current architecture, which is as you can see, quite a bit more complicated and has recently been segmented into 3 different substructures. So firstly, up on the left, we have our global resources. So they're the resources that we run in Australia, and they provide sort of overall management to the whole of Schoolbox Cloud. So we've got virtual machines and containers that provide our management tools, and we have an email server as well. We have a database that contains some central data, not customer data, but our logging and metrics, and also an S3 bucket that contains our logging and metrics. We then have our regional resources, so we have a set of these in each region that I just previously showed. And in each region we have a database that contains some things that we only need one of in each region because they're not hugely used features, some containers for a little bit of processing, and again an S3 bucket for files. And then finally we have the individual clusters. So in each of our regions we can have anywhere from 1 to 3 at 4 at the moment clusters, but we can have as many as we like, and each customer instance operates within a cluster, and they're independent of each other. So if one cluster were to have a failure, it means only customers within that cluster are affected. And within the clusters, that has our primary resources that run the Schoolbox instances. So we have primary compute servers that do all the processing, sysyncs, background jobs, overnight optimizations. And we have our compute servers that actually serve the end user web requests. So in each cluster, we have multiple of those. We also have caching and queue servers. So when a user requests a page from Schoolbox, rather than actually go and rendering it from the database, we first check if we've recently rendered it within your cache timeout. And if that is the case, we just pull it out of cache because it's much quicker. And then queues, which is all of your notifications waiting to be delivered to your users via push or email. And then finally, we have our database in RDS. I'd like to sort of have a bit of a discussion now about some of the not so great experiences that you had as customers in the earlier part of this year with Schoolbox Cloud. And I'll sort of provide some background on around how that occurred. So we're anticipating that by this time this year, so the end of June 2025, we'd have 25% of students using Schoolbox Cloud. So when we look at our proportion of customers on cloud versus self-hosted, we do it on a per student basis. However, in February 2025, we had a significant influx of schools wanting to move to cloud, and about 5 months in advance of our target, we went well past that target at 28%. And whilst that was something we really wanted to celebrate as a company, unfortunately, this hadn't given us enough time to complete enough of our roadmap to make sure that the service could be delivered to meet your expectations and also our expectations. However, we were fortunate that we had done a whole bunch of work already to allow us to quickly deploy more capacity, and we did so and shifted customers across within a couple of days, which alleviated the issues. And I just want to share quickly a little chart that we captured. So the top chart shows the volume of requests per second during this problematic time, being the first day of semester 1, 2025. And you can see compared to the first day of semester 2, 2025, the amount of requests to our system was anywhere between 2 and 2.5 times what was typically the case. And this was something that took us by surprise a little bit. However, we've learned a lot from that, and we have made some refinements to our roadmap to help us address this issue. We think that the main cause of this spike of usage at the start of semester 1 is parents logging in for the first time who don't normally log in that often, but we're not entirely sure. All right, so I guess next we'll have a look at what we're doing to address the next iteration of Schoolbox Cloud. So that will sort of be the fourth iteration. We've already done most of the things we want to do for that, and there's one piece left. So some of the things we've done over the past 8 months, we've redefined our VPC structure to be more efficient. So within an AWS region, there's multiple of what they call availability zones, and each of those are geographically separate in different data centers. Their idea is that if you spread your resources across multiple availability zones, it means if one data center is adversely impacted, whether that be power, internet, some form of natural disaster, the other availability zones continue to work. So we've redefined our structure to spread ourselves across each availability zone, but also make sure that we keep resources that need to work most quickly with each other within the one availability zone to reduce latency. We've started shifting away from Intel processing to ARM-based CPUs. These are a lot more power efficient and also a lot faster at processing threads on a dollars per compute basis. So this is allowing us to deploy more modern CPUs more quickly and help handle these high volumes. As part of that, we've also changed to more modern disk and more modern networking to increase the throughput of that. The product team has done a heap of work as well. They have added in a lot of logging and tracing of the requests through the system so we can identify slow requests and help either reach out to you to help improve the configuration of your Schoolbox instances to make those requests run faster, or allow us to make optimizations in our code to achieve that on a fleet-wide basis. And we've also introduced probably what our most proud feature is at the moment, which is cross-cloud replication. So that means, unlike a lot of cloud providers which only store the data in one cloud ecosystem, whether that be AWS or Azure, we now replicate between two totally independent vendors, being AWS and Cloudflare. And this means that your data is securely stored in both, and your database is backed up to both on a nightly basis. And if we were to have an outage that impacted all of AWS, for example, they had a cyber attack, we would be able to restore your data still to within 24 hours of it last being functional. The final thing that we want to implement and that we're currently working on and hoping to roll out over the next month or two is auto-scaling web request servers. So you might recall in my slide a couple back that we have multiple of these secondary compute servers. These are the servers that are the ones that process the end user requests. So in my chart that showed how many requests per second we were receiving, these were the servers that were having to be scaled up to handle that load. What auto-scaling will do is allow us to automatically, without our input, increase the number of these servers that are available. And this effectively means that in the morning, we will have more servers online automatically and ready to go. And throughout the day, as load tapers off, we will automatically take those servers out of the available pool, finish any processing that needs to happen on those, and shut them off. And what this means is that our cloud architecture will look something like this. As you can see, we have removed the big, large secondary servers and replaced them with multiple little ones instead, which allows us to be more granular about how much capacity we have there. And we've also shifted some of the processing that those servers do into their own separate servers. So for example, the virus scanning feature that we introduced a bit over 18 months ago will be shifted into its own side server so that it doesn't impact the user requests being processed. You might notice that some of the text here is in green. These indicate the servers, oops, there it is. These indicate the servers that we've shifted to the ARM architecture. Of course, some of it we're still leaving in Intel architecture for compatibility reasons, but we do aim to shift as much across as possible. And finally, we're going to be rolling out a replacement for our email server. So currently we manage our own mail server, which has worked really well, but it has some scaling and redundancy issues, and it's also only available in Sydney. So we're going to be rolling out Amazon's built-in simple email service, which will allow us to scale email much better. It'll allow us to help you understand and debug delivery issues a lot better, and it'll allow us to send emails directly in each AWS region as opposed to routing them all back through Australia. So I guess that sort of has explained what is happening now and next. And after that, of course, is what our future vision is and why we're doing all of this. As Schoolbox continues to grow as an application and matures, it's going to be inevitable that to achieve what we want on our product roadmap and to implement modern features, particularly around AI, there's going to be the need to leverage cloud-based resources that simply are not available in self-hosted environments. Historically, we have maintained the same code base in cloud and self-hosted and the same feature set. However, because of this desire for more features to use modern cloud-based technologies, we eventually see there being a divergence, which means that cloud customers will have perhaps some features that, because of technical constraints, such as GPU availability, won't be possible in self-hosted. And that's why we're doing all this work to make cloud the best choice for hosting Schoolbox now and the best choice for hosting Schoolbox in the future. And I've sort of listed some of those technologies that we're going to be leveraging in cloud down below. That are things that some do works on self-hosted. You can do containers, but things like microservices, AI that leverages GPUs, these are the sorts of things that are purely reliant on a cloud environment. We also have a vision as a company about what proportion of customers will be running Schoolbox Cloud versus self-hosted. We expect that by the end of this financial year, so the end of June next year, over half of students will be using Schoolbox in Schoolbox Cloud, and we're well on the way to achieving that. By the end of the following financial year, so FY27, we're expecting that only 20% of students will be on self-hosted, and the end of the following, only 10% left. This aligns with a particular milestone we have coming up. For those of you that do the day-to-day administration of your self-hosted environment, you might be aware we're running Ubuntu version 2022.04, which is a long-term supported version through to April 2027. However, we can't use it past that, and that's what we're wanting to use as a strong catalyst to help customers move up to cloud, rather than going through the time-consuming task of rebuilding your self-hosted server onto a new version of Ubuntu and migrating the data, which is time-consuming for you and us. We are hoping that everyone is happy to move up to cloud. The other thing that we're finding is that over the past 2 years, it's been increasingly challenging for schools to manage self-hosted applications. Modern application hosting is really complex, and particularly with the continually emerging cyber threat landscape, it's just becoming more challenging for schools to both meet their compliance requirements as well as provide an environment that allows a modern SaaS application to function as well as it can. So some of those things that we're seeing is increased usage patterns, straining resources, whether that be compute, memory, or disk. We're seeing increasingly stringent network security requirements, so things like NIST and Essential 8, as well as a prevalence of web application firewalls, which are fantastic tools for protecting legacy applications, but sometimes lack the intelligence to differentially protect modern applications, which have a lot of those protections built in and end up causing some conflicting issues. We're also seeing schools being challenged with hardware or AWS or Azure subscription costs, and of course restrictions by upstream providers on email delivery volume. That's been particularly prevalent amongst customers in the Microsoft space, where they're reducing the volume of email you can quickly deliver through Exchange compared to what it used to be. So let us solve some of these problems for you. Storage, as I mentioned, we've recently started replicating between 2 cloud environments, which means your data is truly backed up whilst in Schoolbox Cloud. Scaling is something, as I said, we're working on, and auto scaling will be delivered in the next 1 to 2 months. And of course, backups. We've historically done nightly backups, but we've also started, we also have 5-minute transaction logs of all databases in Schoolbox Cloud. Email, as always, we've provided email as part of Schoolbox Cloud, and we're continuing to invest in the tooling of that and rolling out AWS SES soon. Firewall, we implement a firewall within AWS as well as provide WAF equivalent protections baked into the code. And of course, we manage all the updates for you, so you don't have to worry about booking updates when you're using Schoolbox Cloud. Finally, we have our monitoring by my wonderful infrastructure team, which is done all by us in Melbourne, 100% in-house. So what are the things you might need to do before you migrate to Schoolbox Cloud? There's not a whole lot that you need to do to prepare, but there are some things that we don't support in cloud because they are legacy features. One of those is LDAP. So if you are using LDAP and wanting to move to Schoolbox Cloud, it is the time to shift to SAML or OAuth, being modern single sign-on integrations that we have. For schools that are using the TAS DirectDB or the ISAMS DirectDB, it will be time to move across to the TAS or ISAMS API sys connector. And for schools using Synergetic, we will continue to support you doing your direct database connection, but we simply uplift that to an encrypted connection to ensure the traffic is safe over the internet. You might recall that at Meetup last year, we did speak about rolling out the ability to connect to Synergetic over in Schoolbox Cloud, and we're really happy to report that we've got a significant number of schools who have completed this transition, and it is working really, really well. A common question we get is about the integration and data access. So you are able to access your data in Schoolbox Cloud just like you are on Schoolbox self-hosted. You can continue to have your direct database access. We just simply provide you an SSH tunnel to make the connection over to ensure it's secure. The Premier Partner integrations all work the same, and the summative report generation is much faster and more reliable when you are in cloud. And now, just before I get to Q&A, just a bit on pricing. For many customers, there is no extra ongoing cost to move to Schoolbox Cloud. However, we do understand there are some schools on legacy pricing still, which there may be a significant difference in the costing between self-hosted and running cloud. So if you are interested to moving to cloud, and that is the case, please have a chat to your school engagement manager, whether that be during Meetup or next week or in the future, and they'll be able to help you through this process. For customers that are moving their physical infrastructure to AWS or Azure, or looking to renew their physical infrastructure, we do find when we work through these exercises with schools that in almost all cases it is more cost effective at the time to take that workload out of your environment and move it across to Schoolbox Cloud. And finally, that as we move to a scenario where 80+% of students are in Schoolbox Cloud, it is very clear that this will be the most cost-effective solution for all customers, both on a cost of service and a hosting cost basis. And with that, that's the end of my slides. So I'll open the floor up to questions, and James has the mic to pass around.
That, Evan.
Yeah, that was a bit quicker than I expected.
Have we got any questions? Up the back here.
Can you just talk a little bit more about the email side of things? So we've got a custom PostFX mail server, mail relay. We've explored SendGrid in the past. Now we're kind of looking at some Azure side of things. We are migrating to Schoolbox Cloud later or early next year. And that's a surprise to see the email side of things. So can you just talk a little bit more about, is that something we're not going to have to worry about?
Yeah, that's right. You won't have to worry about it. So as part of the Schoolbox Cloud migration, we take over the email delivery for you and manage that. So in your self-hosted instance, as you're saying, you've got it connected to your custom mail server. You might have used SendGrid or Office 365 or Azure's mail delivery service in the past. You don't need to have that anymore and pay for the cost of that mail volume delivery. We simply ask you set up a SPF record pointing to our mail server and add a DKIM key into your Schoolbox instance, which you may already have, and we will manage the mail delivery for you.
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of problems with email delivery, and that's why a lot of customers use SendGrid or something like that when they're on-prem. But yeah, hopefully in the cloud we take care of all delivery and remove all of those issues. And then I think down the track also long term we'll probably look to maybe make if we can with AWS SES is make those logs visible so that you can see delivery reports and things like that. We don't know whether that's possible yet, but that's what we'd like to get to, be able to expose that data to schools so they can see delivery information as well. At the moment, that's only available on request through our support desk, but we'd also like to have delivery reports available for you to reference if you need that sort of audit control.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point that I neglected to mention. You might have noticed my graph I had here earlier, which is from our Schoolbox Monitor platform that runs on a monitoring system called Grafana. We have had a lot of requests to make this data we have about your instances in Grafana available to you, and that is something that is happening imminently. So we are in the middle of launching a My Schoolbox customer portal platform, and inside that, by the end of this year, we're going to be having some dashboards in there that you can access some of this performance and log data about your instance. Some of you may have already had some communications from your school engagement manager about it. However, if you haven't, that will be coming very soon over the next week or two. And if you want a sneak peek, you can go to my.schoolbox.education and log in and see what's there already.
Can I just get a hands up? Who's seen that communication? Who's logged into the portal so far?
Dave has, because he tested it for me.
Okay. All right, so yeah, we probably need to get people more informed about that. But yeah, we've done a lot of work over the last sort of, what is it, 6 months we've been working on that, Harris? More? So we've built out an entire customer portal for you to manage your account. So that's going to have your contact details, who your supported agents are. It's going to have all of the information that we normally collect during the renewal process is all going to be available through that portal. So you can check it, you can update it, and keep us up to date with any changes that are happening in your school around enrolment numbers, who we need to support. So that's how we're going to authorise people for support as well in the future. And then, as Evan said, we'll also make available all of our data logs and reports and things like that through that portal. So it'll be a secure space just for the support contacts within your school to access that information.
Yeah, so if you do go to log in and find you can't, you do need to be a support registered primary IT or key contact or sponsors. So yeah, if you haven't updated that in a while, you might need to get in touch with your SEM who can update it for you, and that will grant you access.
Do we have any other questions? No one?
Yeah?
Yep, go Miles.
You're already in cloud, Miles.
You talked there about the queues that you've got. Is there any chance? I guess probably two questions. One is like, is there any chance, that you can start emitting events that we can subscribe to? And the second one with that is similar, but that's for getting real time triggers. But yes, we've got that SSH access to a database, but it's still really hard to pull that data to Data Lake because we don't get CDC, we can't do change data capture on that because of what it is. Any thoughts on how you might be thinking about supporting mirroring all the data out to our lakehouse, that sort of thing?
The queue server is more just a notification delivery queue, so it's probably not going to have that sort of thing that you're after. What you're probably after is sort of webhooks that emit events when students submit work or something like that. That would be a product feature, so I'd recommend going onto Schoolbox Help and submitting a feature request in the forum. That makes it James's problem. In terms of being able to do a change analysis on the database, our recommended best practice is, rather than querying our database directly, take a dump of the table or tables that you need periodically to your local MariaDB or SQL Server, whatever you're using, and then use that to do the change analysis, because that will be a lot faster for you to do locally than against our cloud.
But you're talking, Miles, more in terms of being able to connect it into a data lake platform. We haven't got any particular plans at the moment, but we'd be happy to think about it in the future. We certainly, we've provided the ability for Intelli schools to sync a lot of the data to a data lake for their own analytics and things like that. So we do it through our partner program, but we haven't made it sort of a commercially available endpoint other than just the database access at the moment.
I just know, if it was our cloud infrastructure, so if it's like a database of ours in AWS or in Azure, we can turn on today, more and more of the databases support native CD. Yeah, exactly. And so we can say, here's a thing, here's a destination miles away, right? And so there is no heavy lifting. There's not, you're not having to worry about that whole thing. I mean, we even do it with TAS, believe it or not, today.
Maybe we need an infrastructure feature request page on the forum.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting question, Mars. Let me take that on notice, and I'll get the team to have a look into it, and get back to you in a week or two.
Anyone else have any questions? I'll prompt you, security questions, or perhaps latency or speed or data sovereignty questions?
Just a question on the pricing model. So previously, and I'm not sure if this is changing, we could have you host the data side and have the on-prem server, and there's an additional cost for the data. With the cloud is there like a data storage cost? Like if you go over
No.
a certain, or it's just a flat?
No, and in fact, if you're currently paying for the add-on hosted storage, that charge will no longer be applied.
Yep.
So
fantastic.
yeah, in cases where for schools who are using add-on hosted storage, especially if you have multiple terabytes of it, it's usually cheaper to shift the whole workload to cloud.
Yeah, we do really want to encourage people to go to the cloud, so we are obviously making it a more financial beneficial solution for most people.
Yep.
You know, from our perspective, it obviously it costs us more to host and do the compute, and you see how sophisticated the system that's hosting it all is becoming. That's not a cheap thing to run, but where we save is in the support and the extra effort required to maintain an on-premise instance, which is increasingly becoming, as Evan spoke before, more and more challenging. There's more and more things that go wrong, more and more things that we have to fix or monitor or chase up when they break, and it's ultimately it's easier for us to manage it when it's in our environment than it is, and the cost benefit for us is that people time versus the AWS bill.
Yeah, so as a tangible example, every time we do a major upgrade for a self-hosted customer, it's 1 hour at least per customer of our staff time. So you can imagine that that's like 200 hours we wouldn't have to spend if everyone was on cloud 3 times a year at the moment, which is significant.
Any more questions?
Okay, so under the previous model, storage cost money. We were incentivized to kind of tell students and teachers to watch the storage amount. Don't upload large video content as part of your submissions. Really manage and maintain that. There's a settings within Schoolbox where you set the limit of file attachments. With the storage limit being done away with in Schoolbox Cloud, how do you envision you're going to manage that? Is there's still the expectation on schools to manage file size limits, or are you foreseeing where that's no longer going to be a problem? If students want to upload multi-gigabyte video files as submissions, that's allowed?
Yeah, that's a good question. Look, I wouldn't encourage you to go and remove the file size upload limits. I'd encourage you to maintain your good practices around that, simply so that when teachers go to download the submissions and look at them, they're not downloading 2 gigabyte videos and whatnot. And in any respect, if students upload really big videos, our system goes and transcodes them to smaller formats and returns them to the user anyway. We do store the original one, but we don't really use them in the system, so it's a bit pointless. So at the moment, there is no hard limit about how much you can store as a customer. We do have a fair and acceptable usage policy, like any software vendor, but thus far, that's having to enforce that's not something we've had to do.
Yeah, just as a FYI, there is a 2 gig maximum limit on all files in the system, so you can't go above 2 gigabytes. But yeah, as Evan said, the file limits are not so much to protect us, they're actually to protect your users, to ensure that your users don't have a slow experience, or things are taking too long, or they're uploading things that take a long time. So all of those reasons we recommend them staying in place. So yeah, keep the file limits.
Just on file storage before we go to Dave's question, the other thing you'll notice differently in cloud is with your self-hosted environment, you have to have a separate storage disk for staging, and most schools don't replicate all the files across because it doubles the amount of space you use. In cloud, we share the same storage pool between staging and production, so when you log into staging, everything's intact and all the images are there, which makes it much more useful for your users and conducive of them of actually testing things when you ask them to.
And another thing I just thought of on the storage, I'm going to talk a bit about this tomorrow, but one thing that I've always said about storage is that it's better to make storage my problem than your problem. And for a long time, we've had this issue where people have said, why does Schoolbox never delete any files? But now that the files are coming into the cloud system, now they're my problem. So now we start to look at building in cleaning tools, data retention policies. They're all on the roadmap for the next 12 months to make sure that we manage the storage growth in the cloud, so we're not incurring huge costs as we accept all these new files and new customers coming on board as well. So there'll be a lot of new work around how we manage files in the future as it becomes a growing cost.
we have for the 30-ish% of students on Schoolbox Cloud, we have in excess of 150 terabyte of stored files at the moment, so it's significant.
Thanks, Evan and James. I concur with your thoughts on file storage. I inherited an instance where the 1 gig was the file upload limit, and teachers were downloading Photoshop files that were nearly a gig, which didn't even work for submissions anyway. Since my IT team aren't here, Evan, have you got this documented that I could hand over to them in a nice clean package with risks and mitigations and everything?
Yeah, we do. We have a couple of pieces of marketing collateral available. If you head across to the strategy studio, there's a A5 flyer about Schoolbox Cloud. On our revamped website, you might have recently seen we launched, there is a page about Schoolbox Cloud that outlines most of what we've talked about. And we'll also have recordings of this session available after Meetup for you to share with other people back at school.
I've also got a security measures document on the website as well, which goes through all the security measures, both at an organisational level and at a cloud level and at an on-premise level. So that's also worth referencing as well if you're interested in all the measures that we have in place across all the systems from a security perspective. Because as you're probably aware, we all get asked these questions every week. What are your security measures? What have you got in place? What do you comply with? What systems do you comply with? So we've put all that up on our website for you to review and hand over. So that's just a 2 or 3 page document that you can reference if you have any questions around the security of the platform.
Question over on the side, James?
You mentioned a little minute ago about the staging server once we go to the cloud. Can you repeat that? Because what I thought you said was that they're almost identical now and we don't have to do a sync to upload the latest data from production to staging. Is that correct?
Yes and no. So you don't need to sync the files. The file pool is shared, but you still need to request the database sync for the data to come across. So they're still separate servers.
Sure.
Staging, just like you're staging now, sometimes runs a newer version of Schoolbox Cloud. So you might have noticed that staging's running beta 4 of 25.1 at the moment. But as opposed to self-hosted, where you have separate disks in your hypervisor, and if you wish to have the files from production in staging, we have to have the same space in disk available to do the copy. With cloud, we simply request the file out of the same storage pool. So yeah, it's still separate from a user's from a database point of view and what you see on the screen, but the file pool is shared so that when you've done the database sync, the database says, hey, this file should be here, and staging has it available, as opposed to self-hosted where often it's not available and it gets the sad image icon instead.
Sure. So as we try and get our staff to do the OLC more, and traditionally I've been giving them access to the staging to when they're making example pages and things like that so they're not touching production, is there any thought to potentially allowing IT to do that sync themselves, or is that always going to be a request into you guys?
In the future, we think we'll have a feature where in the My Schoolbox portal, you'll be able to press a button and it will request a sync job occurs. It won't necessarily occur immediately. It would have to go into a queue. We haven't made that available at the moment because in the self-hosted environment, a lot of things can go wrong with those syncs. We often find that schools have changed network, firewall, VLAN rules and the servers can't talk anymore. But in the cloud, we certainly could. It's an environment that we control and we potentially could make an on-demand sync available, yes.
Cool, thank you.
Other ideas I've toyed about as well as also having regular syncs occur that you could opt into, things like that to make it easier for you to test major upgrades in advance.
Can I just ask at a show of hands, how many people do regularly use their staging server for testing? Good, still valuable, still keep providing it? Excellent. We had a question over here.
Sorry to make you walk. I assume if you're accessing the same data layer underneath, there's no possibility for staging to write back to that? If it's the live production data?
In terms of the files?
Yeah, I can grab that one.
James can take that one.
Yeah, that's a bit of a product question. So the way the storage system works is that it uses a unique identifier for every file. If you upload a file to the staging server, it does go into the storage data pool, but because it's a unique file, it won't overwrite anything. We never overwrite anything, so it won't touch any production data from like an upload perspective. The other way to think about it is we're also got some cleaning tools. I mentioned about cleaning up files and things like that, which I'll talk about more tomorrow. But that tool as well has been designed specifically not to function in staging environments. So anywhere where we're doing something destructive to the storage system, we design it specifically not to be destructive in the staging environment, knowing that we're sharing the pool with a production environment. So yeah, from a write perspective, it's not an issue, but from a destructive perspective, it could potentially be a problem. So we've particularly made the program not do that.
And we've intentionally waited to implement the cleanup until we've had this cross-cloud replication for files in place, so that if something were to go wrong, we have multiple levels of redundancy, firstly in the other cloud environment, but secondly in AWS. Once something is deleted, it's not actually deleted, it's going to wait 90 days before it actually deletes it. It just simply becomes unavailable for Schoolbox to access. So from your perspective, it looks deleted and you'll see that something's gone missing, you can contact us, we can restore it.
We've got protections on our protections on our protections. So there's multiple layers. There's layers from the product perspective, but also the infrastructure team also has layers as well. So often they've got our back if we make a mistake at the product level, and vice versa. So there's multiple layers of protections if something goes wrong in that space.
Question in the middle?
Just wanting to talk about the upgrade. You guys are sort of selling that as a good feature there, that you'll manage the upgrades to new versions when we move to the cloud. And I understand it from your point of view from the resourcing, absolutely, but from the school end, we actually enjoy at the moment being able to, book those upgrades in. It allows us to time them and manage internal comms and training with our staff at key intake points, or when we have access to staff at PD days and things like that. Is there any, allowance or possibility in the future of us being able to still manage the timing of upgrades even if we're cloud?
It is something we've considered, and it is technically possible. We could roll out the ability to do this. However, it is highly complex and would add a lot of cost for us. And to be honest, if anything, we'd probably start going the other way and start removing the ability for self-hosted customers to keep this control, because we have a lot of issues with customers sitting on versions that are 12 to 18 months old, and this holds us back from being able to modernize things. The amount of legacy tooling that we have to keep in place for months and months after 99% of customers have moved off to version is huge, and we're really wanting to avoid this. And realistically, I can't think of many other pieces of software where you have that sort of control. So you don't control your version of Office 365 you're using and that sort of thing. It's just not how modern SaaS works.
There is some aspect from the product though to think about as we modernise the product, making sure that as we roll out new features that they are controlled with feature flags. And so that allows you to manage the change, not so much tied to our release schedule, so we can do releases and release without necessarily impacting your school. And then you can then make the change on your time scale and your time frame using feature flags within the product, or turning this on, turning that off at your leisure. So that's probably the way we would like to head. There is the opportunity for us to look, if it becomes a really big issue, there is an opportunity for us to look at running two versions at the same time, but as Evan states, that would require us to run double the infrastructure basically to provide for that. So if we can avoid that using the product to manage the change and make sure that schools are comfortable with the change management process, we'll probably prefer to do it with a product-based approach rather than like a release based approach.
Yeah, and also as we move to doing 3 releases a year rather than 2, the volume of change in the release will reduce. So that makes that transition easier. But yeah, feature flags, I mean, we already have those for our AI features, for example. By default, they're disabled. Staff won't know they're there until you're ready to, until you test them, configure them, and train staff. They will have no idea.
Yeah. So and I talked earlier today about the UI change as well. Like that's obviously a big change, and we're aware of those sort of big changes and how to roll those out in a way that doesn't just while mid meeting or mid parent teacher interview. The whole Schoolbox looks different. We're obviously aware that we can't do those types of things, and we're aware of the concern around managing that change. So that type of thing, we'll make sure that there's a feature flag where we might upgrade and deliver that new look, but you have the control and you say when that new look will be applied. So it'll be those types of decisions we make as we go along with the product to control that type of concern. Yeah. So we just want to make sure we're sort of conscious of the change impact, and where there's we're implementing a release with a change that has an impact, we need to make sure we've got controls, and we're coordinating with schools so they understand how to use those controls. Having said that, like we always have this issue, and Evan sort of alluded to it, that we do all this work to deliver new features and new functions, and then they don't get turned on or schools don't use them. And that's why we have these events, right, is to publicise and talk about all the features, because we know that engagement with some of our latest features is low. We need to continue to encourage people to turn them on and move. So it has to be a double-edged sword. We have to have a constant communication to get schools to upgrade and to push forward, and make sure that they're taking advantage of all the latest features. So you're not stuck in a place where you're like, why does Schoolbox never change? Why does they never deliver what I asked for?
I think, James, you've got a great story about a customer who come up and asked for a feature who hadn't upgraded for 3 years and it was delivered 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do appreciate the challenge of particularly sometimes when our release cycles align with those peak school periods, such as reporting. In that particular case, we had as many schools asking for the release to be there because they wanted to use the new feature in that reporting cycle as those who didn't, and we end up sort of stuck in the middle. What a practical solution for us for cloud schools in the future might be to offer a choice of 2 dates, and there'll be the standard date and then the delayed date, which might be, a couple of weeks later, so that if you happen to have a major school event on that night, parent-teacher interviews, a parent information night, something like that, you've got the opportunity to delay it.
Yeah, just while you were talking about the upgrades, I completely missed the last daytime upgrade that you did during the holidays, I think it was, or whatever. And I just wondered, is there a way you could actually force like a message of the day or a notification for super users in the actual live instance to say there's updates coming?
So at the moment, we communicate outages that I think you're referring to in a couple of ways. We put posts on Schoolbox Help, which you can subscribe to through push or email, and we also have our status page that you can subscribe to. And if you subscribe to the status page, you'll get an email a couple of hours before the outage will occur.
Are you talking about outages or upgrades? Upgrades. So with our upgrade communication, and you raised an interesting point, I was just thinking about that, was one of the things that we've been trying to do with upgrades is to schedule them during school holidays to avoid the change impact again. So we've been trying to make them during school holidays, and then of course people come to me and say, why did you upgrade while I was away? I couldn't manage that change because I was on holidays. So it's... Oh, this is the other problem.
This is the other challenge. We're not just managing Australian ones either. We've got
we spend a lot of time looking at calendars and trying to find the exact perfect date. You can never find the perfect date. And I think that's the point, is that, if we do it during the holidays, people say, I missed it and it went out and before I could communicate it. If we do it during school, we have all the people up in arms about how it, changed while they were in mid-class. It is a challenge. I don't think there's an easy answer to it. I think, from my perspective, making the upgrades smaller is one way to do it, is to make the change less impactful, each change to be smaller, and also give control over that change. In terms of the comms around upgrades, yeah, we post it on help, we post it, we do send email comms as well, so there's about 2 or 3 email comms that go out prior to the release. One at the beginning of the beta cycle, we send an email out at the beginning, which is about a month before we go gold, so that would have already gone to you. Hopefully everyone here already got their beta email saying that we've gone to 25.1 on your staging server, hopefully. And then from there, you've got a month to review the release notes, review the change, and then have a plan. And then we have scheduled it in the end of September for the gold release, which hopefully is in the middle of the holidays again.
Just thinking about the UI and all the work you will be doing in the background for change managing that. While you're doing all that documentation, can you just organise all the comms for us to give to our parent community, our staff community? Because you know, as you're well aware, ops staff are very time poor. Even the awesome features you're doing, like pausing notifications, I sent an email to our comms manager. This is going to be great. Let's look at implementing it. Yeah, I think it's great too. Let's talk about it maybe in a month when we can get around to it and get time to approve those sort of things. So, yeah, if you can just do all the documentation for us and all the comms for us, that'd be perfect.
This is
Yeah.
new service for your IT team, Evan.
That sounds like an issue for support. They're located out in Sophie's Lounge. Fortunately, with ChatGPT, it can be quite good at writing these mundane communications that unfortunately no one ever reads anyway.
Yeah, we do try to, I guess, help schools with change management, but it is very community specific. And like we often, we work really hard to make sure our release notes clearly document. The other thing we do is we've got now pop-up notifications with feature tours and things like that to alert people of the change, to help inform users that there's a new change and provide them a little video and things like that so they can learn about the change. So we do that side of it, but yes, it's an ongoing problem. I mean, technology is just, that's the reality, right? Like, it's constantly evolving and we have to it's our job to keep everyone informed.
Any more questions before we wrap up? I think that's it. Well, just to finish off as some next steps, I need to go back to the end now. Just to sum up, hosting modern software applications, as we've unpacked, is tricky. So please make this our problem to manage for you. We really like doing this all for you. Schoolbox Cloud is the most reliable and comprehensive service and a secure service to host your Schoolbox instance. And as we've sort of described, it is not a static service. It does continually evolve. We do have a limitation on how many instances we can migrate during each term break, which is the most popular time. So if you would like to book a migration for the next term break or two, please speak to your school engagement manager so they can reserve a time that most suits you. And with that, yeah, get in touch with your SEM to talk about it today. There's a link to Schoolbox Help there where there's a bunch more information about cloud as well, or as I said, check out our new website. So thank you.
Thanks, Evan.
I think that is the last session for today as well. So feel free to get refreshed before the drinks and entertainment start this evening before dinner. I believe there are some exciting things happening.